Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So today I was watching CNN and I saw this interview with U.S. Attorney General William Barr. And during this interview, he was downplaying racism and police brutality. And what I want to do is play the audio from that interview and then provide my commentary. Also, after this particular live stream, I'm going to do another live stream as well tonight. So I hope that you all can hang in there with me and watch these live streams and provide your commentary in the chat room. Hopefully, I'll have time to get to people's comments in the chat room. And I want to hear from you before I get started. Is the audio fine? Can you hear me okay? I see that T-Boy threw up a 7 already. So I guess the audio is fine. So yeah, if you throw up a 7 in the chat, I assume that the audio is fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna play this audio from the U.S. Attorney General. He was on CNN on Wolf Blitzer's program, and Wolf Blitzer asked him some questions about racism and police brutality and about a system where you have two different justice systems, one for Black people and one for white people. So if you all can bear with me for a second, I'm going to play the audio. And if you can let me know if there's any problems, I would appreciate it. So here's the audio, and I'm probably going to interrupt as he is making statements so that I can respond to a lot of the things that he's saying.
The city is clearly struggling in the aftermath of what happened to Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times in the back by a police officer. Neither you nor the president had a chance to meet with him, or his family, for that matter. What would be your message to them?
So I have to address that point first before he gets into his message to them. Number one, it's just like outrageous that the president hasn't reached out to the family of Jacob Blake. You have a horrific situation where this young man was shot 7 times in the back in front of his children. He was unarmed at the time, and he's paralyzed from the waist down, probably for the rest of his life. And you don't have the president, like the president goes to Kenosha, but he doesn't try to meet with the family. He doesn't make a statement to the family. He doesn't show any kind of sympathy towards the family. You got this U.S. Attorney General, doesn't meet with the family, doesn't express any kind of sympathy. And this tells you a lot about the Trump administration. And, once you get into the other statements from this U.S. Attorney General, it just exposes, just how little that this administration cares about the plight of Black people. And it's just a reminder of how important elections are. And I am actually disgusted that you have so many Black people here on YouTube defending Donald Trump, supporting Donald Trump. And then you have these other people who are low-key supporting Donald Trump by encouraging people not to even vote. So let me finish playing this audio for you.
To the Blake family.
I guess my message to them would be what it would be to all Americans, which is in cases where it's possible or there's concern over excessive force, we have a process in this country to make that determination. And it involves initially the state looking at it and also the federal government. And we are investigating it. And that should follow due process and be fair to everybody, including the police officer. And violence is not appropriate. Our justice system has to respond to, analysis, reasoned analysis, not mob violence.
So you testified that you think you understand the conversations. This is when you were testifying before Congress that Black parents have with their children about racism in this country. How do you think African-American parents around the country explain to their kids what exactly happened to Jacob Blake, for example, and why that police officer had his knee on George Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to talk about the Blake case.
Why not?
Because I think it's different than the Floyd case.
What's different?
Well, Floyd was already subdued. incapacitated, in handcuffs, and was not armed. In the Jacob case, he was in the midst of committing a felony and he was armed. So,
yeah. So I have to, respond to that. First of all, he's saying that he was in the midst of committing a felony. There weren't any criminal charges pressed against Jacob Blake. As far as I know, there haven't been reports, as the CNN reporters have pointed out, there have been no reports that he was criminally charged with anything. And then also, he mentioned some knife in the car, but he didn't have that knife in his hand at the time. And there's no evidence that he was going to his car to get a knife to go after these police. So, they're basically trying to smear this brother. And one thing that I find to be odd is, he talks about how there's an investigative process, but it seems like he's already reached a conclusion that this shooting of Jacob Blake was justified just by his statements. His statements trying to distinguish this situation from the George Floyd situation and basically suggesting that the police were justified in shooting this brother. Here you have an unarmed brother, not attacking the police, not posing any kind of threat to the police, walking away from the police and trying to go into his car. And this police officer proceeds to grab him and shoot him at least 7 times, shattering his back. And as a result, the brother can't walk for the rest of his life. And they did this in the presence of his children. And you have this U.S. Attorney General trying to justify this shit. And, when I think about this, man, it just, again, shows you how important elections are, because the president is the one who appoints the attorney general. And you have an attorney general that doesn't even see police brutality as some major issue. He doesn't see racism as a major issue, as you will see in the rest of his comments. And this is why these people need to be voted out. The Trump administration has to go. And anybody telling you that these justice departments and presidents are one and the same, regardless of who's elected, they are telling you a straight out lie. Because, who is the president matters, because they appoint the attorney general. And if you look at how the attorney general, Eric Holder, handled the question of police brutality, and even his successor, how they handled the question of police brutality compared to how Jeff Sessions and this guy, William Barr, handled police brutality question, you will see that there's a night and day difference. You will see that there are totally different perspectives and attitudes on this. You will see that you have one administration, aggressively investigating the police departments, aggressively entering consent decrees with these police departments to end discriminatory practice. And you have another administration that downplays the significance of race, downplays police brutality, downplays the role of the federal government in addressing police brutality. And here you have this guy, William Barr, basically defending the police here, even though he's claiming that there's some investigation going on. But he has already made up his mind just based on his own comments.
That's a big difference from the standpoint.
His family says he was.
So I see we have a troll in here. All right. So let me play the rest of this. And you would think, like, before I go any further, you would think that these people who are so, so against white supremacy and racism, all these people, they do all these videos about police brutality, you would think that they would be concerned about who is the attorney general. Because the attorney general, not only does the attorney general deal with police brutality questions, they deal with all kinds of civil rights matters, whether we're talking about hate crimes or we're talking about violation of all kinds of rights, whether it's voting rights and other civil rights. They are the ones that help enforce those laws. So who the president is matters because he appoints these people. So let's continue on with this this audio, and I will get to your comments in a second.
Well, I think
there may have been a knife in the car, but he wasn't armed when he was shot.
Well,
that's what his family and his lawyers said.
I stated what I believe is to be the difference, and that's why I don't want to talk about them as if they're interchangeable. Okay, now.
See, now you see that Wolf Blitzer pointed out some obvious facts, like he pointed out how, you know, he didn't have a knife in his hand when he was shot by the police. You know, he pointed out other things. And then this guy wants to backtrack away from that because he doesn't want to engage in a debate about the facts and stuff like that and just says, I don't want to talk about it. And I think that that's very revealing. It says a lot about this man.
I did say that I do think that there appears to be a phenomenon in the country where African Americans feel that they're treated when they're stopped by police frequently as suspects before they're treated as citizens. I don't think that that necessarily reflects some deep-seated racism in police departments or in most police officers. I think the same kind of behavior is done by African American police officers. I think there are stereotypes. I think people operate very frequently according to stereotypes, and I think it takes extra precaution on the part of law enforcement to make sure we don't reduce people to stereotypes. We treat them as individuals.
Because on this
Okay, so there are a couple of things that I want to address in that statement that he made. You know, he talked about how, you know, he was asked about, you know, people being treated as suspects and not citizens. And it seems like what he was trying to do is basically use the fact that some African Americans respond in a similar fashion as racist white people to their own people. And he's trying to use that as some kind of excuse for the conduct, you know, even though he's saying that people shouldn't react towards people based on stereotypes and stuff like that. It seems like he's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to pretend like he's so against stereotypes while at the same time defending people's using stereotypes in a lot of ways, like defending the fact that you have some Black police officers that operate in a similar fashion. And the fact of the matter is, Black people have been just as brainwashed as white people when it comes to issues of race a lot of times. A lot of Black people have internalized self-hatred. They have internalized the racist views of the dominant society, especially in the police department. You know, it's a culture that teaches people to view Black people as suspect, you know, to have suspicion and fear around Black people. So even a Black person, a lot of times have been indoctrinated to racially profile Black people, to view Black people as more dangerous than other people, to view Black people as a threat, and to view Black skin as some kind of badge of criminality. And unfortunately, you have a lot of Black people that do this. You know, and back in the day, the group NWA had a song called Fuck the Police. And in that song, they talked about the Black police officers showing out for the white cop, basically trying to show the white cop that he's just as down with, you know, the police and just as willing to be brutal to Black people as a white officer, just so that they can fit into that environment, an environment of oppression of Black people. So yeah, I had to make that point. So I'm going to continue playing the audio, and shout out to everyone in the chat room. I will get to your comments.
Jacob Blake Sr., the father, said there were two justice systems in our country. One that shot his son 7 times in the back, and one that let the 17-year-old white gunman walk away after shooting and killing 2 people. Your reaction?
Well, I think the gunman escaped, and the government of Wisconsin is seeking his extradition.
But are there 2 justice systems?
So I want to get to that whole, I think that Jacob Blake's father made a great point on that issue. And I think that it's valid. I mean, it's a valid point, because here you have a situation where this guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, shot and killed 2 people. and he injured a third person, shooting a big chunk of this person's arm off of his body. After shooting these people, Kyle Rittenhouse is walking down the street with a gun, with an assault rifle. And you have a crowd of people yelling that this man just shot somebody, telling the police that this man just shot some people. Do the police arrest him? Do they stop him? Do they shoot him or anything like that? Like they shot Tamir Rice? Shot Tamir Rice within seconds upon seeing him when he just had a toy gun? No, they don't do any of that to this guy, Kyle Rittenhouse. Instead, they just allow him to walk by police vehicles after shooting and killing 2 people and injuring 1 person. They allow him to leave the state of Wisconsin and go to Illinois. That's how they dealt with him. But look at how they dealt. And then, there are 2 systems. The one system that deals with people like Kyle Rittenhouse, and another system that deals with us, like they dealt with Tamir Rice, shooting him within seconds after seeing him in a park playing with toy guns. A system that deals with a Jacob Blake, an unarmed black man, shooting him 7 times in the back and paralyzing him. A system that deals with a George Floyd. His life in their minds wasn't worth the fake $20 bill he allegedly tried to use at a store. They felt that it was appropriate to put a knee on this brother's neck while he kept repeatedly saying that he can't breathe. You got example after example of this stuff, of double standards, where you have police that deal with their own white people with kid gloves. They treat them with, respect and kindness and all that kind of stuff. They treat them like human beings. But when it comes to black people, they treat us like animals. And the first thing they do is shoot, and then they ask questions later. And then you have juries that allow these pigs to get away with killing our people. So clearly there's 2 different justice systems, one for black people and one for white people. And this guy is basically trying to suggest that there aren't 2 systems. So let's continue on with what he has to say.
Systems here in the United States.
No, I don't think there are 2 justice systems. I think the narrative that that the police are, epidemic of shooting unarmed black men is simply a false narrative, and also the narrative that that's based on race. The fact of the matter, it's very rare for an unarmed African American to be shot by a white police officer. There were 10 cases last year. 6 of them, the suspect was attacking the police officer physically. So these are rare things compared to the 7,000 to 8,000 young black men who are killed every year.
Okay, so I want to address a couple of things. First of all, he said that it's a rare problem. This problem of unarmed black men being killed by the police, and then he cited some statistics. I would be interested in checking out those statistics, and getting all the facts around those statistics. But we know that when it comes to the question of police brutality, despite them claiming that is something rare, we know without a fact that black people are disproportionately killed by police. Unarmed black men in particular are disproportionately killed by the police. That's something that he can't deny. He can talk about how the numbers of people actually getting killed by the police are low, but the fact of the matter is he can't deny the fact that black men and black people in general are disproportionately killed by these police. Unarmed black men are disproportionately killed by the police. As I've cited time and time again, there's a Washington Post report from 2015 that pointed out black men account for 40% of the unarmed people killed by the police, but black men only make up 6% of the population. There's something wrong with that picture. We can't say that this is not a problem when every other day we're hearing about another black person killed by these police, another armed black person, whether it's Breonna Taylor, whether it's other people killed by the police in different ways, George Floyd, or we have, You know, all these other examples, like this brother Jacob Blake, even though he wasn't killed, he was severely injured. We have cases going back as far back as we can remember. I mean, we remember Walter Scott, the brother shot in the back while running from the police, even though he was unarmed, shot and killed by a police officer. We had a case of Botham Jean, who was sitting in his own house, and a police officer went in his house and killed him, thinking that he was an invader, even though that was his house. So we have all these repeated examples. Sam Dubose, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, you know, Freddie Gray here in Baltimore. All of these examples of Black people being killed by these police. Breonna Taylor. But yet they want to pretend like this is some non-issue that is so minor and minute that it's not a real problem. It's a real problem for us when Black people are the ones being disproportionately killed by these police. It's a problem for us when these police constantly get away with murdering our people. And then, you know, he brought up this whole Black on Black violence red herring, you know, bringing up the issue of Black on Black violence, quote unquote, Black on Black violence, to basically suggest, well, you know, more people are dying from Black on Black violence than from police brutality. When the fact of the matter is, even if, I mean, you can say, just looking at the numbers, that more Black people do die from inner city violence. But that is not the question. This is not a question of which group, you know, what causes more Black people to die. The question is a question of police brutality. By bringing up this Black on Black violence red herring, it takes people's attention away from the issue that we're talking about. We're talking about police brutality. We're talking about racial profiling. We're talking about police targeting and killing Black people at disproportionate rates. That's what we're talking about. Let's stay on subject. Don't let these people try to throw up smoke screens and have you talking about some Black on Black violence. That's a completely separate issue that needs to be dealt with separately. It's separate from the issue of police killing people under the color of law, using their badge as a license to kill Black people. Those are two different matters. And, you know, we can't let these people confuse us and have us talking about some Black on Black violence. You know, of course, we care about all Black lives. You know, whether Black people are killed by the police or killed in the streets of America by other Black people. We care about Black lives, but let's not confuse the issue. We can have a conversation about the need to end the senseless violence that plagues our communities. But we also need to have this very important conversation about police brutality, this important conversation about racial profiling. So let's continue on. Just bear with me a second.
There's systemic racism in the justice in our justice system and among the police. But you did say this. You did say, I do think it is a widespread phenomenon that African American males in particular are treated with extra suspicion and maybe not given the benefit of the doubt.
That's what I just said.
But doesn't that sound like systemic racism?
No, to me, the word systemic means that it's built into the institution. And I don't think that's true. I think our institutions have been reformed in the past 60 years, and if anything, has been built in.
So this guy is talking out of both sides of his neck. He said that, you know, first of all, that Black men are treated as if they're suspicious by the police. But then he goes on to say, you know, he doesn't believe that there's systemic racism. I mean, it's like he's trying to have it both ways. The fact of the matter is, with the statistics that I mentioned earlier, you know, with Black men in particular being disproportionately targeted and killed by these police, unarmed Black men in particular, that points to systemic racism. You know, the overly aggressive policing in our communities points to systemic racism. You know, the fact that Black men are viewed with suspicion, viewed as criminals, viewed as up to no good, or, engaging in criminal activity, that speaks to a systemic problem. And, again, under the Obama administration, they investigated several police departments, issued reports, finding that there was systemic racism and discrimination within various police departments around the country. There have been all kinds of studies documenting this racism, documenting the problem of racial profiling and police brutality. You had reports like the report, of the Justice Department's report here in Baltimore about this racism that's entrenched in the police department. The same is true for Ferguson and other cities around this country. There's all kinds of studies that have been done proving racial profiling and stuff. But yet this guy wants to pretend like it's not a systemic issue. And this, again, is why leadership matters. This is why elections matter. Who you vote for president determines who you're going to have in the Justice Department. Do you want another 4 years of a Justice Department that doesn't give a damn about police brutality, doesn't give a damn about racial profiling and the killing of our people? Do you want another 4 years of that? Do you want another 4 years of a Justice Department that's not doing its job in the area of civil rights? Well, if you want that, then just sit at home and don't vote like a lot of these do nothing, know nothing, fake pro-blacks on here encourage you to do, or just allow things to happen. And you will see another repeat of this situation where nothing is done about police brutality, where you have an administration that pretends like it's not an issue, like there aren't two justice systems and all that kind of stuff. And I just, for the life of me, I can't understand why you have Black people on here, who used to be Black nationalists, people that used to talk about the red, black, and green and all this stuff, actually supporting this guy, Donald Trump, supporting an administration that has a Justice Department such as this one. So I'm going to play the audio and then continue on.
It's a bias to non-discrimination and safeguards against that. And so that's what I'm reacting to on systemic. And also, I think we have to be a little careful about throwing the idea of racism around. Racism usually means, that I believe that because of your race, you're a lesser human being than me. And I think there are people in the United States that feel that way. But I don't think it is as common as people suggest. And I think we have safeguards to ensure that it doesn't really have an effect to someone's future. I think we've made a lot of progress in the past 60 years.
See, and he uses a very narrow definition of racism, basically saying that it means that, you believe that somebody is lesser of a human than you are and all that kind of stuff. Race, that's not all that racism is. Like, people had this idea that racism is the KKK or the skinheads or somebody that uses the N-word and all that kind of stuff. Racism is deeper than that. People can be racist without even realizing that they're racist. I'm sure that those cops that helped to kill the brother George Floyd probably thought, hey, I'm not racist. Or those cops that killed Freddie Gray, they probably think they're not racist. Or the cop that choked the brother Eric Garner to death, he probably thinks he's not a racist. Or that cop that shot Philando Castile and, watched him die live on Facebook Live, probably thinks that, hey, I'm not a racist and stuff. I mean, another aspect of racism is the idea that, that Black people are dangerous, that, the Black man is particularly violent and up to no good, a criminal and all that kind of stuff. The idea that Blackness is some kind of badge of criminality, that's an example of racism. It's not necessarily somebody saying, well, I believe that white people are superior or something like that. That's an example of racism, but that is not the only limit to racism.
Listen to this, to listen to the American left nowadays, you think we've gotten nowhere after all.
There's no doubt there's been a lot of progress.
And that's another point that he made about like how there's all this progress and all this and that. I mean, we do have certain laws on the books as a result of civil rights workers. We have certain laws as a result of, as a result of various, laws that have been put forth by, progressive politicians and stuff like that. But as we can see every single day, we're hearing about another Black person being killed. So even though there has been some progress, the fact of the matter is we haven't come nowhere near where we should be as a country, man, when we look at all these Black people being killed by the police. Whatever progress he's talking about is not enough, obviously. As long as you have all these people being killed, the Breonna Taylors, the, Eric Garners, Freddie Grays, Sam Dubose, Philando Castiles, Walter Scotts. As long as you have these situations, you can't be talking to anybody about progress and how we've come so far and stuff like that. We have a long way to go. And the first way that we bring about progress is by getting rid of people like Donald Trump and this U.S. Attorney General.
But do you think Black people are treated differently by law enforcement than white people?
I think there are some situations where statistics would suggest that they are treated differently, but I don't think that that's necessarily racism. Didn't Jesse Jackson say that when he looks behind him and he sees a group of young Black males walking behind him, he's more scared than when he sees a group of white youths walking behind him? Does that make him a racist?
So he's basically trying to say, the different treatment alone is not racism. And then what he's using is Jesse Jackson's statement from way back in the day to shield against charges of racism, to shield against, claims that this is racism and stuff like that. And, I just have a couple of things to say about that. By treating people differently on its face, that is racism. The fact that a Black person doing the exact same thing as a white person is cause for suspicion. That's part of racism. That is the definition of racism. And the fact that you have Jesse Jackson making a statement that I really think is an ignorant statement, a bigoted statement, a prejudice statement, that doesn't change the fact that it's, just because it's a Black man that makes that statement, that doesn't justify the conduct of these police officers. That doesn't justify racial profiling. The ignorant statement by another Black person can't be used to justify racism that we see in our society. And that's what they try to do. That's why they need people like a Candace Owens, for instance. And I'm going to show you what Jesse Jackson had to say about people, this attorney general using his statement from back in the day to kind of defend racist police and stuff like that. I'll get to that in a minute. But for right now, I just want to address this. That's the reason why they use people like a Candace Owens or any one of these other Uncle Tom Coon Negroes. They use them so that they can have a buffer against charges of racism. So if they have a Candace Owens saying bigoted things about Black people, ignorant things about Black people, then they could, they don't have to worry about charges of racism because it's a Black person doing it. And that's essentially what he's trying to do with Jesse Jackson's statement, taking his statement out of context. So yeah, I want to go into, let me pull up this article so you all can see Jesse Jackson's response. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay, so here's the article right here. I'm going to go to. So it quotes, this U.S. Attorney General William Barr when he said that, didn't Jesse Jackson say that when he looks behind him and sees a group of young Black males walking behind him, he's more scared than when he sees a group of white youths walking behind him? And then he goes on to say, does that make him a racist? And this is what Jesse Jackson had to say in response. He said, Jesse Jackson told CNN that back in the 1990s, his family lived in a drug-infested neighborhood where a family member's son was killed right in front of my house, killed right in front of my wife, a drug thing. And then he went on to say that he had been talking about the young man who killed his relative. If he comes behind me, I would be afraid. So he's talking about how this is more particular and it's not a general statement about Black people. And he said, now what Mr. Barr said is the opposite of what I meant about crime. Those shot in Wisconsin, the killing in Ferguson and the killing in Atlanta, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, all of those were police killings that had nothing to do with who was coming down the street. I would love to have a conversation with William Barr. So that's what Jesse Jackson had to say in response. And I would really be interested in hearing what you think about Jesse Jackson's response on that particular question for those people in the chat and for the people that may watch later. So let's see. Let's just close this out real quick. Hold on one second.
But it sounds like there are two systems, one for blacks, one for whites. That sounds like there's still racism in the justice system.
Well, no, I think we have to make sure that, stereotypes do not govern our actions in the justice system. And I think police departments do a pretty good job of trying to police against that. And I think...
So he said police departments do a pretty good job of policing against that, despite all these killings that we see, despite the Rashard Brooks case, despite, Jacob Blake, despite Breonna Taylor, despite all these cases, he wants us to believe that police are doing a pretty good job at that. I just think that that's preposterous. It shows you how clueless this guy is. It shows you how unworthy he is to be in that position as U.S. Attorney General. And basically, this guy is a yes man for Trump. He doesn't have any kind of independent thought or action at all. So those are my thoughts about what he had to say. I'm going to check out your comments in the chat right now. And after I do this, I'm going to do one more live stream tonight. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, so Covina Man said, don't forget that Barr and the race soldiers are police brutality criminals who tear gas protesters in D.C. this year. Exactly. I mean, Donald Trump, in order to get a photo op, he used federal officers, law enforcement officers to go after nonviolent protesters in D.C. just to make a point for his campaign ad, just to make a point for his whole campaign. And I just find that to be despicable. But yet and still, you got people pretending like Donald Trump and Biden are one and the same, which is just ridiculous. All right, so let me see what else you guys are saying. Lion Champion said, you're talking sense and facts when ADOS supporters are dealing with feelings and emotions. Exactly. Yeah, so Def Rocker said, remember Boys in the Hood, the black cop had the gun to Cuba Gooding's head. Yeah, I mean, there are so many examples of black police officers engaging in police brutality. They are no different from the overseer on a plantation. They're no different from, a lot of times they're no different from the black person that the slave master used to beat other slaves. They're no different from that. They serve the same purpose. They're the same people that snitched when people were trying to plan a rebellion on the plantation or planning to run away from the plantation. They are modern day slave catchers, man. Just like when the slave master would track down the slaves, he would have some old house Negro slave bootlicker with him to catch other black people. And that's the role that some of these black police officers allow themselves to play. They don't have any problem being brutal to Black people. You see this time and time again. We saw it here in Baltimore with the killing of Freddie Gray. It was Black police officers that had something to do with that brother's death. We look at the case of Sean Bell in New York. Black police officers, if I recall correctly, were involved in that shooting of that brother. So yeah, it's not a surprise, and they try to use that, use these Black officers as some kind of justification for the police officers' actions. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this whole thing's a demonstration of why these elections are very important. Don't let these people tell you that it doesn't matter who you vote for. These same people that'll tell you that will be the same people on here crying about police brutality when they had a chance to do something about police brutality by electing a president that would put in the right attorney general, by electing their local district attorney that would prosecute these police officers that commit violence against our people, by electing a mayor that views ending police brutality as a priority. But instead of doing that, a lot of these people want to sit at home and complain on YouTube in the comment sections. Yeah, so I'm just looking through your comments. Yeah, and this is a great point that Def Rocker makes. He says they need to stop comparing Black violence and police brutality because the police are the ones that we look to for protection. Exactly. I mean, the police, there's a couple of reasons why they should stop comparing these things. Number one, they're completely two different subjects. Number two, when a Black person kills another Black person in the community, and that person is arrested and they're witnesses, that person goes to jail. He's locked up. He's punished for his crime. But when these police, these punk ass pigs kill our people, they walk a lot of times. And in fact, they are celebrated and defended not only by the police unions, but by groups of racist white people who put up all kinds of thousands of dollars to protect these people, to pay for their legal defense. And then they actually are celebrated in some communities. I recall how those police officers that killed Freddie Gray received some kind of award from some right-wing organization. And as we speak now, you got people raising funds for that guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed two protesters. So yeah, I mean, these are completely different situations, man. This Black on Black violence thing, and then we depend on police. Like police, as Def Rocker was pointing out, police are supposed to, in theory, protect and serve the people. We pay the police through our taxes. We pay their salaries. But instead of protecting and serving, a lot of times all they do is harass and brutalize Black people. So Nate Nelson said, I don't hear Joe Biden stepping up and saying anything about police brutality either. Well, you must not be listening to the news because, he made a statement very recently about police brutality, about these protests. If you go onto his website, you'll see his agenda for the Black community. So it is an issue that he has addressed. It's an issue that Kamala Harris has addressed as well. It's a night and day difference between them. And again, as I've said time and time again, I'm not saying that Joe Biden is some ideal candidate or he's some super progressive. But when we look at the situation, he is a better choice than Donald Trump. He is a better alternative than Donald Trump. And this election comes down to two people, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That's what this election is about. These third-party candidates have zero chance or zero possibility of being elected. Either a Democrat or a Republican will be president. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump get another 4 years. I will use every opportunity that I have. I will use my voice to condemn everything that this man stands for. He's a racist bastard that doesn't give a damn about our people. And I'm going to make it known every opportunity that I get. And, you know, I could recite all the examples, but people that are familiar with this channel know about those examples. It's time for people to study. It's time for people to do the heavy lifting and do your research on these candidates. Don't just listen to what I'm saying about the candidates. Don't listen to just somebody on YouTube. Go do your homework. Go on their website, see what their agenda is. Check their record to see what they have done in the past and compare and contrast those two candidates and two parties and come to an intelligent decision. That's what we need to do. And when I see what's going on with this Trump administration, when I hear this interview that the U.S. Attorney General gave where he's downplaying racism, downplaying police brutality, I mean, it makes the choice clear and obvious for me. I don't understand why people are making it seem like this is some difficult decision or these two are one and the same when it's a night and day type of difference. So let's see if there are more comments. Yeah, so I want to thank you all for tuning in. I will be back with another a video that's more lighthearted than this. So I hope that you all can join that discussion. I don't know how many of you saw that photograph of Adele with the Jamaican outfit on and the Bantu knots, but I want to talk about that. I'm really interested in hearing what y'all think about it. So with that, peace and blessings. Have a great evening. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. You know, because sometimes YouTube is funny. They don't show my videos or promote them like that. So I need you to hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Shout out to everyone in the chat room. Shout out to Lion Champion. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a good night.